Hello and welcome to Algomancy Constructed. We're finally here. The card pool's ready. We're still finalizing some of the graphics and art. So cards like Red Guy, things like that, don't have the final art for the game. But I think overall, I'm pretty happy with how the cards are looking. We have new card backs. This is very close to the final design, but not quite there yet. So overall, I'm very happy with it. And we're playing Constructed. So the rules of Constructed are currently you get a 30 card deck minimum. You can go over, and it's actually so far in testing, other people have told me that going over kind of makes sense in a lot of cases because of the way that you draw from your deck. You get to see a lot more cards. So it's 30 card deck, 2 card maximum copies in the deck. So I'm just starting out 15 sets of duplicates for now because I've never played before. So I'm starting out with just like an all-in aggro deck, not trying to interact and just seeing, how much damage I can do to my opponents. I really want to like limit test this game and make sure it's fair. But the nice thing is there's no like play draw disparity. So, if you're playing like Magic or something and you play like a really big creature on turn 1, your opponent doesn't have any mana. At every single interaction during the whole game, both players have access to the same amount of mana, resources, and cards. So there's no like, well, I was on the draw, so I died. You're both, on the play the whole game essentially, which is very nice for testing aggro and making it feel like you didn't just get run over. So that's the deck. I'll go through the deck. The way you play the game is you'll see it in the matches, but basically you draw 4 cards every turn, and then you put 2 cards from your hand in the bottom of your deck. So to compare it to Magic, you basically get a perfect brainstorm every single turn. And then you can exchange cards in hand for resources as well. So you can choose your mana, you can choose your cards. There's a lot of flexibility and decisions in that process. So you can find answers and things a lot smoother. Let's get to the deck. So it's tokens, and we're going to go in sections. So the first section is kind of these guys over here, which is like the cards that care about tokens and the cards that actually are like the core of the deck. Then I have a spawn sub-theme over here. And then the only removal spell right now is Flame of History. This is my like interaction and protection. And then this is kind of interaction, protection, but also like proactive pump. So we'll just go to cards one by one. So Hubalin is probably the best card in the deck. As I enter formation, create a 1/1 unit token in my formation. That little symbol there means I haven't come up with a name for it yet, but it's kind of like haste where you can play them before combat. So there's no summoning sickness in Algomancy, but the creature or the unit has to be in play in order to like enter combat. So this you can play before combat, whereas the main phase happens after combat normally. So on turn 1, you play this and you basically get 2 1/1s right away. It's very good for growing stuff quickly. Next is Big Flower. Just gets +1/+1 for each ally in the region. So, you attack with Hubalin, suddenly you play a 3/4 Big Flower, and you just start going crazy. I like that growing thing. Whenever another ally enters play, put a +1/+1 counter on me. So growing thing plus Hubalin, like, you start putting tokens into play, and this gets huge. Ally just means basically creatures you control in play. So whenever another creature you control enters play. In team games, it also includes your teammates. So it's just a little bit more general, but it's pretty good. And then Animated Spark, I'm not sure about this one, but it seemed good in theory. Allies get +1/+0 for each non-token spell you've cast this combat. So, you play a bunch of tokens and then suddenly this grows them. It is a static effect, so there's risk because if they kill this, the buff goes away, so you don't just like permanently buff your team forever. But if you can play this and protect it, even one buff from this card is very strong. And then these 2 cards, Emblem of War is very good. When it enters formation, basically whenever I attack or block, allies get +1/+0 until regroup. And then it has this hexagonal symbol here, which is the graft symbol, which essentially means that you can combine its effect with other effects. So when I enter formation, allies get +1/+0 until regroup. You can combine this effect with anything else that has the graft symbol. So I only have, these 2, like if Test Plant Buddies dies, you can graft it onto this. But 2 spells, basically, you can like graft them onto Emblem of War and add their effect. So Sudden Bloom says units you control in the region of your choice get +1/+1 until regroup. If you graft it onto Emblem of War, now when it attacks, allies get +1/+0, and then they'll get another +1/+1. So your team's going to get real big. So it's a graft enabler. It also just grows my team. It's pretty solid. The one I'm least certain about is Test Plant Buddies. Whenever you create a token for the first time each turn, target ally gets +3/+3 until regroup. So, it's just a lot of damage very quickly, and it is a graft outlet, but it's kind of weird to trigger. Maybe not in this deck. I'm just testing it out and seeing. I like the card, though. Symbiosis Created Growth X is a token spell that just says target unit gets +X/+X. So this is like a really good combat trick to save one of your units from damage and then grow them to be, this deck can make a lot of tokens. So you could do like 10, +10/+10 to something very quickly. More realistically, like +5/+5, unless you're already winning that game. So this deck is very bad when it's behind. It's like a house of cards all in aggro, which seems good for a brand new format. Then let's get to the spawn package. So spawns are tokens. I think I can grab one. Sorry if the graphics are doing weird stuff. This new background for the game looks good in person, but not on YouTube. Spawns say sacrifice this at the end of combat. It's a 0/1 and cannot block. So they're like the worst possible creature you could imagine. But they're units. So they enter play, this is a 1 cost to make 3 spawns. So they die at end of turn, whatever, we don't really care. They can attack, and they enter play. So, they grow Big Flower, they grow Growing Thing, they get buffed by Emblem of War and Animated Spark, they count towards Symbiosis or Sudden Bloom. So there's a lot of things that spawns do for us. But the main thing is we're playing Red Guy. Again, we're going to update this art, but this says your spawns get +2/+1 and don't get sacrificed during regroup. So this lets them stay around, gives them relevant stats, and then this also makes a spawn at the end of each turn. So it's kind of like an engine, it's an enabler. I love this card, it's so sweet. And then Spooky Spirit as well, whenever I enter formation or die. It's only once per turn, so whichever of these happens first, you create 2 spawn. Not great on its own, but that's a huge amount of token production to go crazy with. And if we have Red Guy, we can keep the spawn and attack with them later. So there's a lot of cool stuff we can do there. And then this also has graft, so like you can graft Birth. Birth is probably the card we want to graft the most, so you can play this, make 3 spawns, and then like graft this onto a Spooky Spirit, and then whenever this attacks, you make 3 more spawns, so that you could just you can make a ton of spawn tokens in one quick burst, and then if you give them like Sudden Bloom or whatever, hit your opponent for crazy damage. Then we have a tiny bit of protection, so Boon of Protection is just probably the best counter spell in the game right now, but it only really protects your creatures defensively, so you can't offensively counter stuff. But if your opponent tries to point removal spell at one of your units, this is just a good way to stop that from happening. Soul Tithe, I had to do it. This art's also going to be updated probably, but negate target effect unless the controller pays 1. If an effect is negated this way, draw a card. It's just a good card. It's sweet. I don't know if it's actually good in this game because of the way combat works. You play all of your essentially sorcery speed stuff after combat, and there's no interaction then, so you can't Soul Tithe your opponent's units most of the time. But I'm trying it. The main idea for this deck is everything's very cheap. So all these cards cost 1, except for Spooky Spirit and Red Guy. So the idea is I don't need to take that many resources. And I could just tax my opponent's mana, and I can still have mana left over to do things that I want, right? If I Soul Tithe their thing, Boon of Protection, Flame of History, I still have 1 or 2 mana up to play Emblem of War plus Graft of Birth onto it and things like that. So just a little bit of cheap interaction seems maybe good. The card I'm most excited about is Redirect. Change the targets of target spell or ability unless its controller pays X, and you just pay X for it. So if they have 4 mana, they spend 2 mana trying to play a removal spell. You can redirect for 3 because they only have 2 mana available. Basically get a 2 for 1 because you make them kill their own thing. And then because our deck is so cheap, you can use that last extra mana to play a Hoobalin, a Big Flower, or something like that. So the idea is get onto the board cheap and early, and then hold up mana to mess with their plans, turns 2 or 3 and onward. So we'll see how it goes. Again, literally my first ever match of constructed Algomancy with this deck. So I'm excited, and I'll see you in the games. Okay, so we're in the game now, and I'm just trying voiceover. so that, you know, I can commentate on live games that we've been playing. So I'm playing against My Lemon Lime. I played against them in a previous game. And the way Constructed works is you start with 4 cards in hand. You draw 4 cards every single turn. And then you're going to put 2 cards onto the bottom that you drew for that turn. So I'm putting these 2 cards. So my opening hand right now, Soul Tithe is a card that I don't think should be in the deck after more inspection, so I could just get rid of it. And the reason for doing this is it allows you to have more options in your deck, more toolbox options, without like always drawing dead, right? Like if you draw a card you don't need in a certain matchup or a certain location, you can just bottom it. So my opening hand ends up with 6 cards. So you're going to gain 2 cards every single turn from that. Then you go to the mana step. Whoever has initiative chooses their mana first. So you can see my opponent has 2 fire over there in the top right. And they played a Hubalin, which is the card that I have. It has haste whenever it enters formation, or as it enters formation, you create a 1/1 unit in that spot. So my opponent, basically the turn cycle is they take initiative, so they get resources, play haste stuff. Then because I don't have initiative, I get to do those things in response. Then they have to declare attacks if they want to declare attacks. And I believe in this case, Lemon Lime does. So they come over, they get a 1/1 in the formation spot. Then there's a priority window here. So because my opponent has initiative, they need to act first. So if they have any spells, they need to do that first. If they say no, then I can block their units or move over and attack them. And that's the same priority window. So if I was attacking them with Hubalin here and then blocking them, I'm going to pause it here, and then blocking their unit, that would happen at the same time. You saw me highlight there. Basically, we resolve this region first. So we finish this entire combat. They attack me for 2, I take 2 damage. So there's a defender's priority window, which is the same time as when I moved my units over here. After defenders, there's like a post-block priority window. Then damage happens. Then there's like an after combat priority window. So we just kind of jump through all of that because neither of us had stuff to do. That combat resolves, and then we resolve this combat in this region. So I get to choose my formation, I get my enters combat triggers, and we do the same thing. So there's attack priority window, block priority window, damage. We don't have any of that, and we're kind of like learning through the process. So they're immolating their guy kind of after damage. Technically, they needed to do that before taking damage over here. In most cases, it doesn't really matter. It's just some like sequencing things. But for example, if they drew a card off that immolate, they could then use it in this combat after that step. So that could be something. After the combat step is the main phase. This is when you play most of your stuff, except in this deck. So I get down a big flower here, I believe. He's pretty good. And then I have initiative. So that's 1 turn cycle. It's pretty short, pretty fast, and the pace of this game is nice. So there's no like waiting for your opponent's turn really, because our main phases are effectively at the same time. In paper, you do have to like, one person has to move first, but there's no interaction during the main phase step. So it's kind of just like, play this, play this, play this, done, you go. And then their opponent's like, play this, done, you go. So the objective of setting the game up this way is so that the entire thing is just interacting in combat. So for turn, I drew 4 cards. You start out with 2 free resources. I kind of skipped through that, I think. You can trade those for resources. Every turn after the first turn, you have to also trade away cards if you want to take mana. Like I could, with this deck, very easily just stay on 2 resources and play out a full game with just all 1-drops. That's a deck building decision if you want to. But I do have a red guy and Spooky Spirit that require double red. So I at least have to play a single red this turn if I want to play them. So I'm kind of deciding how many resources I want to get. The maximum number of resources you can play in a turn is 2. So basically, if you want to take 2 resources, you have to put 4 cards on the bottom. 2 for turn, like just default, and then any additional allows you to take resources. So I bottomed 4, so I'm going to take a fire and a fire. And then the resource abilities say if you have 3 fires, you get a shard for free, which is like a colorless resource. But you can only play 2 resources per turn, so I'm just going to save that for the following turn. Now I have initiative, so I did my mana stuff, then my opponent did their mana stuff. Neither of us have any like haste. I still haven't found out the word for it, but basically pre-combat stuff, and then I'm going into combat. Because I have initiative, I need to act first. So it's not really like my turn like it would be in other card games. It's just in any situation, I have to act first. So like I've attacked them, and now if I wanted to like play a removal spell, I have to initiate, like it's my priority first. Situations like that. So it's very different than other card games where like, you know, it's like my turn, their turn. It's just I need to do stuff first. Then we get to the same spot where Hubalin has this choice where they can attack or block within the same priority window. And one thing you can do is you can block outside the formation as long as it's surrounding a unit. So I think I show this in a second, but this is a legal block if they want to, because they're basically entering formation like next to my guys, and then Hubalin enters formation. They can't put it there though because there's like a gap. So they can put it there, and then they want to get a 1/1 token blocking my Hubalin. Oh, yeah. I'm demonstrating. This goes on indefinitely, so you can block with like 100 tokens like outside of the formation if you wanted to. This just protects against certain cards that are like put a card into an open spot in a formation. Like if I wanted to insert a unit into my formation currently, it would either have to be to the left of this creature over here, or to the right of this creature over here. I can't put it like 100 slots to the right. So it just allows them to protect against like a flashed in attacker or something like that. But they're going to trade off Hubalins. They take 2 damage, so they're not going to attack. And that is that combat. Then we go to our main phase again. So you can see there's like a very clear rhythm of this. I have initiative, so I play my dudes out. Then they have their initiative, and then they have their main phase, and they play their dudes out. Spooky Spirit doesn't do anything, but my red guy gives me a token at the end of my turn. Friendly Flame is scary. So whenever they play a non-token red card during combat, they get a Fireball 1. Everything I have in play is 1 toughness or 1 mass. So Fireball 1 does 1 damage to anything. That's a pretty scary situation. Drawing 4 cards per turn though, I mean my board is pretty big. It's very weak. If they kill my red guy and my Spooky Spirit, suddenly I just have like a 4/4 and a bunch of like dying tokens. So I'm very susceptible to removal. I do have Boon of Protection and Sudden Bloom to kind of guard against that, and I don't want any more resources. So, you know, I took the hit on turn 2 where I bottomed card for resources, but this deck, you know, everything's very cheap. So I only have to put 2 cards away every turn from here on out. So I'm just going to be drawing action for the rest of the game, which is exactly where I want to be. So my opponent has initiative, and they just play 1 shard, and they have a haste, double Spirit of Battle with haste. This, whenever it does combat damage to an opponent, they sacrifice it, they look at my hand, and they get to discard a card from my hand. This is similar to like a Thoughtseize effect in Magic, because the main phase happens after combat, discarding due to combat damage allows them to disrupt my hand for things that I would be playing in the main phase. In this case, actually, it also allows them to disrupt my interaction that would happen in the region to the right. Sorry for the far zoom in there. Because of the way that priority works, we're going to resolve this whole combat first. They're going to do combat damage to me. Then with that, they'll discard a card from my hand. and then we'll resolve the combat on the right side. So there's a lot of like flow that you need to plan around. Where like, do I want to, for example, if I want to grow my team, right, with Sudden Bloom, if I'm planning to grow my team when I attack to the right, and then they discard Sudden Bloom to Spirit of Battle, I no longer have it in hand when I want to grow them when they're over here. So if I do, I want to play this before I move over. Otherwise, they can discard it. I can't block any of their units because they all have flying. So I may as well attack with them all. And it's quite a bit of damage, to be honest. But we resolve this combat first. And this is right where I realized, like, I can't protect my team, right? I'm very susceptible to removal. Specifically, I know they're playing Flame of History, which is the card I showed in the before. It does 1 damage, and if they kill something, they draw. So it's like really bad if they get to Flame of History my units. So I'm considering playing Sudden Bloom before attacking to protect against that. But I ultimately decide it's just too risky, and I may as well let them kill my stuff. I'll still have 2 cards left over, and I can do that during my main phase. So I attack them. I take the damage. So I take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 damage. And then they get to look at my hand. And it's an interesting decision point here because basically they're deciding Sudden Bloom and Boon of Protection are like my combat interactive cards. Birth and Emblem of War is like my planning for the next turn. And I think this may have actually been a misstep by them because they got rid of my 2 like interactive planning for next turn cards, or my 2 interactive cards, but they gave me more stuff to plan for next turn. When this happened, I thought they were going to kill my units in this region, right? The shields are down, so they could just kill whatever they want, and I can't stop them. If they kill Big Flower and Red Guy, my board just becomes completely worthless. And that's what I thought was happening, but they didn't have removal to follow up, which is why I think discarding my 2 like plans for next turn is probably a better idea, because they take how much is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 damage because Big Flower is an 8-8 or an 8-9. So this deck can definitely hit hard. So that combat out of the way. Normally my spawns would get sacrificed during this step, but because I have Red Guy, they stay around, which is very good. My opponent has initiative, and they're going to play a Ball Lightning, which is a 7-2 piercing, similar to Trample in Magic, so it's just big. My opponent's on a burn deck, which I think this might be a bad matchup for them. And I just deploy all my stuff. So you can see how Graft works in this case. So I'm going to play Birth, which is going to give me 3 0-1 spawns, which are now 2/2s because of Red Guy. Then I'm going to graft Birth from my discard onto Emblem of War. So whenever Emblem of War enters combat, my whole team is going to get +1/+0. And then I'm going to make 3 spawn. And then I'm going to augment Hubelin onto Emblem of War as well. So now it has all of that text, and as it enters combat, make a 1/1. So we're really going big. It is a very much House of Cards type situation because the moment Red Guy goes away, or not the moment, but if Red Guy goes away, all those spawn become basically useless, and then they'll die at the end of turn, and my board doesn't do a whole lot. Especially if they just block the flower. And then yeah, my opponent forgot that they could augment, so I let them do that. We're still new, so there's still takesy backsies or whatever at this point, but eventually that would not be allowable because they basically like passed priority for their turn and then they went to my turn. But we're playing nice. So my draws were amazing. I have removal, which is also card draw, because I'm very scared of their fire guy. Because whenever they play red spell, he makes fireball ones. Everything in play I have right now is a 1/1. So if they are proactive, they try and make a fireball and kill one of my guys. I can sudden bloom and then basically protect my whole team from their fireballs. And then I can Flame of History their fireball guy to protect against that as well. So again, not taking any resources, and we're kind of all in. All these spawns would be worthless, but because of my deck construction, we're taking advantage of them. Emblem of War is going to give them an attack bonus, and they have 3 cards in hand. So I took my mana stuff by just skipping it. They're getting mana, and then they're playing a Hasted Rousing Spirit. And a Harbinger of Death. So Harbinger of Death says everything is deadly. So any amount of damage from anything kills anything. This turns on my Flame of History. And my opponent's tapped out, except for 1 mana. So at this point, I'm pretty confident that I have the win. I'm going to be attacking for a whole bunch. And I can just kind of skip through this. Because we go through a lot of stuff. But, yeah, so at this point, I've pretty much won. Again, most of the games are more interactive, but we were both just playing burn decks and new to the format. When I attack, Spooky Spirit makes 2 spawns. Emblem of War makes 3 more spawns, so I have 5 spawns down here. And then units in play, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 units in play, so big flowers and 19, 20. And it does die to 1 damage because they have everything is deadly. But it's a lot. All of my units get +1/+1 because of Emblem of War and Red Guy, so all of the spawns are currently 3/2s. Which is quite a bit. And then there's one more step of interaction here. Because if they can kill the red guy, my team gets pretty small. So they have Flame of History, which is the same card I have in hand. So if this would kill something, they draw a card, and they get a fireball from the friendly flame. I'm responding to the fireball creation trigger by playing Sudden Bloom in this spot, which is going to grow my team. And then I'm going to Flame of History kill their Harbinger of Death so that their Flame of History isn't deadly anymore. So they need to use both of their stuff to kill my red guy. They only have 4 blockers against this huge army. And Sudden Bloom makes my tokens big enough to where I can finish off the game and kill them. So that's, I guess I'll stop it there. That's the conclusion of the first game. And thank you for watching. We're going to, as we get better at the game, we'll get more in depth, probably have more interactive decks. But for now, I was just testing a linear deck and it was pretty good. So if you're interested at all in participating, join the Discord. There's a link in the description. We're doing it all in tabletop sim. You can build a deck, play for free. There's no restrictions on that. So come join us, and I hope to see you soon.